Hey, what's up, everybody? John Avis here, and welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. I'm excited to share an incredible episode with you today. But before I bring them on, once again, if you're watching this video, please do me a favor, subscribe, turn on the notifications. If you're listening to this, also subscribe. I won't go as far to ask for leaving a 5-star review, although I would greatly appreciate that, but only if you see the value in the podcast. But subscribing will at least give you the notification every time I release a new episode, which is every week, soon to be 2 times per week. And I'm very excited about that. Now, I have a question that I want to ask all of you. And the question is this: can you motivate the unmotivated? And trust me, if you had ever asked me this question, if anyone ever asked me this question before this interview, I would have told you absolutely not. My philosophy since I first went into entrepreneurship was I'm looking for motivated people. I'm not looking to motivate people. Well, I can honestly tell you my belief and my opinion has completely shifted after our guest today by the name of Matt Granados. This interview and his book titled Motivate the Unmotivated have thoroughly convinced me otherwise. Now, Matt is an author and a serial entrepreneur. He built his first successful company at the age of 15. I know, makes us all feel terrible, but yes, 15 years old. And since then, he has built a multi-million-dollar business from scratch in his early 20s. His current company is Life Pulse Inc., which helps medium to large companies all around the world fine-tune their people processes, leading to just huge upswings in revenue. I mean, he's incredible. Goes into a company, shows you what you're doing wrong, and implements some processes, and they make a whole lot more money. It's really awesome. Now, since Matt's personal businesses were focused on strong sales processes, he had to really dig deep, and he had to discover how to motivate his people day in and day out, despite incredible rejection and having just all types of different personalities. So in this interview, Matt shares his best wisdom for motivating yourself and others, even if you think it's not possible. If you are in a line of work where you have to deal with people, or you are maybe in charge of a group or a team, then look, this interview is for you and you will want to listen to this. I promise you. With that being said, get your pen and paper out. Please help me welcome Matt Granados to the show. Matt, welcome to the Mentor Nation podcast, man. I have been looking forward to this interview for some time, so thank you for being on.
I appreciate being here. I love talking about this stuff, so let's get after it.
Well, hey, man, you got your work cut out for you today, because the title of today is How to Motivate the Unmotivated, which obviously is the title of your book. And obviously it works because your book has become an international bestseller. And I want to dig into it. I personally am really interested because, as you probably know, it's very contrary to what most people teach. I mean, how many times have we heard, I'm not looking to motivate people, I'm looking for motivated people and shit like that. And so I'm really excited to hear your take on this. But man, if you don't mind, first, I just want to have you share a little bit about your story and your journey, because man, I've known you for years. And as long as I've known you, you've been just crushing it, bro. Like running a multi-million-dollar business in all of the major organizations that most people can't get into. And I mean, this is like since you were young. And so I'm just really interested, like, how did that all happen? What was kind of the timeline, and how'd that lead to what you're doing right now?
Oh man, we don't have enough time for that, right? I mean, I started really young. At 15 was when I started my first business. And what I mean by I started really young, I think that's one of the advantages I have. The biggest advantage, the biggest strength I have is my complete and utter ignorance. And I mean that very much. I don't know what should or shouldn't be done. I don't know, like, not what's right and what's wrong. That's pretty clear. But like, I do things. People are like, how did you even do that? I was like, well, I just asked. Like I don't have that bone in my body that sits there and goes, maybe you shouldn't ask that. So that's how I've always gotten where I am right now. But at 15, started up a DJing business, Explosive Entertainment. I mean, we were killing it on the Sweet 16s, you name it, we were going after it. And I learned real quickly that, I remember the time I charged, I think it was $1,000 to DJ an event. And I'm like 17 years old at the time. And just this reality, and I said it, and I remember I was like, all right, just say it. And if they say no, we'll just go right back down to 200 like you're normally charging. And I said 1,000. They said, oh, that's it? Perfect. And it was such a weird experience I don't talk about very often, but it's just come to my head right now because it reminded me of the fact that the customer is the one who values what we're doing.
That's right.
Not me. And that leads even to motivation and leadership and mentoring and all the stuff that you talk about and that we're going to talk about on this episode. But it's not about what I have to offer. It's what they feel is valuable in what I'm doing. So when I learned that, I can sell anything to anybody. I just need to give them value. I need to help them find the value. I don't need to talk them into it. I don't need to lie to them. I don't need to trick them.
Right.
I need to find out what is it that they want out of life and how do I tie that to what I'm trying to sell them? And what that led to is how do I lead? What is it you want, John, if you work for me? Literally, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I don't know. Well, what do you like to do on the weekends? Perfect. How do we get more of that? By doing your job with me. And that's how we grew to a multi-million-dollar company hiring individuals off Craigslist. They couldn't even graduate high school. They were making six figures with us, selling little flying squirrels. I mean, literally, we're talking the most ridiculous concept you can imagine. And granted, the system was brilliantly put together by my partners. And when we came into this, I was very blessed to be a younger person in this partnership.
Yep.
But what I took was we have a system. We need bodies. Why aren't these bodies doing what this system can be producing? And it's because these bodies couldn't handle the other parts of life, financial, stability, personal relationships, personal, just personal studies. And they couldn't understand that. So when I learned that if I can get the individual to not be motivated, but be internally motivated, right? Like my job's not to motivate others. It's to get others to be motivated. There's a big difference in that. I can trick someone to be motivated. You just lie, right? I can motivate you. I have a weapon and you have a wallet. I can motivate you to give me that wallet. But in reality, I'd rather you just nicely hand it over. So anyway, that's kind of the long story of where I came from and what I'm doing now. And now with Life Pulse, same thing. My wife came to me and said, man, I knew marrying you was going to be hard. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. How do you manage the craziness that is in your head? And it's, for those who are watching, you see this little book right here. It's called the LP. It's a 9-part planning system that I developed at a time when I lost everything. I mean, employees bezeled 6 figures from me. Fiance at the time left me. Doctor said I wasn't going to make it past 40. I mean, you go through it. I got hit all in a 30-day period, and I was the last to know about it. These 9 questions were the questions that I asked myself, and all I needed to do was get to the next week. I couldn't think further than that. So we put this together. We started using it together. That worked out really well. And all of a sudden, a Fortune 500 company calls me and says, we got a copy of your book. And at this point, we weren't even in business. I was like, what book? Like, I didn't write a book. I didn't even realize what they were talking about. And they said, we have gone through this and it solves our number one biggest personnel problem. Would you like to talk? And I'm like, as an entrepreneur, sure. So we showed up for about 2 days straight. I was unloading on how to use it, how to do it, how I would use it in their team. I didn't have a business at this point. I was just showing how I would do it if I was this size of a business. And at the end, they said, we would have paid you a ton of money for this. And I said, excuse me? I said, you still can. I'm okay with that. And what happened was they said, no, this is the biggest issue every single company is dealing with. And your little book, this thing, solves when we use it properly. So I didn't get to work with them, but what it did was it triggered me to come back to my wife and say, remember you said I have too many things going on, too many businesses. I said, so you thought you created another one and here's Life Pulse. So that went from that Fortune 500 to Google, to Twitter, to the United States Air Force. So we've worked with everyone from big companies down to smaller, $100 million to $5 million, and all the way down to kind of those smaller businesses or individuals in businesses that just want to get more out of everything they do, which led us, as the clients asked, where's your book? Where's your book? Where's your book? So we wrote a book using the stuff that we teach, just put it on paper, and it went to be an international bestseller. First day it was available. It was just an awesome experience. So now we have all of our content out there ready to go. And I love coming on these podcasts to just share what we've discovered and how other people can put it in their life.
Well, man, I'm excited to get into that. Man, why waste time? We'll just get right into the book, Motivate the Unmotivated. Obviously, it's working. People want it. I've been looking at just some of the companies that have used you guys and the testimonials. I mean, they're really incredible. And so I'm really interested because that's the thing, right? Like, I know for a fact, everyone listening to this podcast, that is like, even myself, I own a preschool. 33 employees. I ask myself every day, like, how do I get them to want to do the things that I want them to do?
Yeah.
And so just even reading a part of your book, I was blown away by it. So let's get into that formula and but before actually take a step back for a second, like, how did you, like, did you test this out on your employees? Like, how did you, like, I know you went through some things and then you just, you created the planner and the principles, but like, how did you realize that this was working? Like, did you just try thing after thing?
So I've been doing it for a decade plus. I just only did it when I needed it. I didn't do it consistently. And what I realized is when you don't do it consistently and you need it, you waste a lot of time trying to get it back. So like when your life's falling apart, you're like, I know what I should be doing. So let me reopen up chapter 1 again.
Right.
Versus what I do now, I tell everyone, I say extraordinary people, literally, they have a plan or a system before they need it. They don't wait till they need it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So what it was like, all the stuff that we read about and all the self-growth books, whatever it is you want. It's like, well, you always have it up here, but how often are you using it? And it's really, you're only using it when you need it. Otherwise, it's like, I'll get to it later. What we've done is create a system that gets you to easily put that stuff in your normal rhythms of your day. So therefore, when things get crazy, you've already got a pretty good stockpile of reserves. So you're not starving right away. So you're able to handle things as they come. So yes, we tested this with our team. And that's what I realized was I need to bridge the gap between personal and professional development. Like I have a system like McDonald's. You shake 2 shakes of the salt on the fries. That doesn't take a genius to do. But why does McDonald's have issues? Because employee turnover. It's not because the system's bad or the food's garbage, right? Look, there's been garbage forever and it's still doing well, right? That's not new. But what happens is they have systems that work, and now we need the people to want to show up to do the systems. So when you go to something as mundane as putting salt on French fries, it's a big deal to the company how you do that. From cost perspective, quality control, all that stuff. But for the individual doing it, it doesn't mean a damn thing. Unless we do this thing that we call PVTT. It's personal value tied to task. That is what the entire book is about. How do I tie personal value to the individual so that they want to do the job that they're supposed to do? It's been a big trend about ownership, right? How do you get my employees to have ownership? Look, if your employees are making $7.50, $10, $15 an hour, I don't care what you tell them, they will not have an ownership mentality. I don't care what book you read. I don't care what podcast you have them listen to. It just won't happen.
Exactly.
So instead, I get down to their level going, what do you want? Man, I'd love to be able to get Fridays off. Cool. Here's what we need to do to get Fridays off. And then they come back and go, actually, I don't want Fridays off, but I do want this. Perfect. Here's what we need to do to get that. The issue right now is we want to give people what they want. And we all know that. We've all heard that kumbaya crap. However, what we don't talk about is few people have a damn clue what they want.
Right.
So as a manager or a motivator, right, you got 33 employees. If you ask them, what do you want? I guarantee you well over half would say, I want more money. And you're going, look, I give you guys bonuses. Nothing changes. What is it you really want? And that's what our system does.
That's good. Now, let's get into the actual. Now, is the formula what you just shared?
No. So the formula is this. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
And just show. Oh, you got to make me a host. But
I will.
What happens with the formula? And I'm going to share this. I'll talk it through. So anyone who's listening, don't think you're going to be left out. But I want you to see what it is that we do and how it is that we do it. And the biggest thing when it comes to motivating others is recognizing that we are, and here's the formula right here, that we are working with these other people to get the most out of who they are and what they do. So as you see, we customize. If you want to look at it and you're listening to this, go to lifepulseinc.com/corporate solutions. And here's the concept. The formula is how well you know you plus how well you know them. So the sum of you and them times whatever system you're using equals the results you're going to get. It's as simple as that. How well do you know you? How well do you know them? And you times that by whatever system you're using, you're going to be able to predict the results you're going to get. Here's the cool part. When it comes to motivation, it's not necessarily two people, but it is two parties. There's the you, which is the motivator, the person doing the motivating. And then there's the them, the motivatee. And sometimes we're both. Sometimes we have to get ourselves going. So how are we doing that? All of the stuff we teach goes into that and works specifically on these things. And then finally, the system. What system are you using to scale what you're building with you and the motivatee. And that's why our systems are so effective, because we put them into this solution and we get the exact predictive results that we want on a regular basis. So I think the biggest thing was, how did I know this concept works? Well, I was literally on a motorcycle. I was driving through Yellowstone where this first idea came from me. And I kept saying, I don't understand why somebody would choose to be unmotivated. Right.
Yeah.
Like why? Like, what a terrible life that is. That's not an enjoyable life. Even they might say they like it. They don't like it. It's not an enjoyable life. It's not a fun way to do it. So instead, what we do is we make sure that we are working with individuals to figure out what that is. So the difference between a motivated mindset and an unmotivated mindset, because the big key on everything I do is motivation is not a character trait. It's a state of mind.
Right.
And like I told you before, if it's a state of mind, just like selling, I can change that. So to sit there and say you can't motivate people unless they want to be motivated, that's just not true. Look through history. There's two ways to motivate people: fear-based and love-based. Right. We've all experienced fear-based, and we remember that. And that's usually what we defer to when we have to push someone to do something, right? There's also love-based motivation. And if you've ever experienced it, you will never forget it. Fear is based on force. Love is based on understanding. Which one takes longer? A lot of people would say love. I argue fear, because fear, you have to constantly apply pressure. Otherwise, people will stop being motivated.
Right.
If I'm robbing you at gunpoint, I need to keep that gun there until I'm done. Otherwise, you're not gonna be like, okay, put the gun away. I'll still give you everything. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
But when it's love-based and it's based on understanding, when I leave, that impact is still with you.
Gotcha. Now, I know in your book, you talk about being unmotivated as kind of a cross section between being lazy and unaware.
Yes.
And I want to have you expand on that a little bit, because I don't want to make the mistake of thinking, because the book states, obviously anybody can be motivated, but it's not to be mistaken for somebody that just doesn't give a crap, right? Like, I mean, if somebody just doesn't care, that's a whole different ball game than them just being unmotivated, correct?
Yes. So if someone doesn't want to like be there, like let's say you're like, hey, I want to motivate my kid to play basketball. Well, if they don't like basketball, what are you doing?
Okay.
Right? You want to motivate your salesperson to be a better salesperson, and they don't want to be in sales. Like you're fighting an uphill battle that's not necessary. Now, I have been able to work with people who don't want to do what it takes to be in sales.
Yep.
Want to be in sales because of the reward that comes with being in sales. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And where that comes from is just changing their paradigm. Not necessarily of, hey, you do this, you're going to hit these goals, you're going to get paid. But you do this, you do your job well, here's what you're going to be able to do for your family. It's just changing, it's connecting. PVTT, personal value tied to task. So when we come into companies and we do our motivation management program, and we do that with one individual we can do it up to hundreds. We work with the manager to show them how to instill motivation in their people. And the best way to do it, we do an assessment that's called a motivation catalyst assessment. And then we follow that up with a quick survey to understand what is it they really think's going on. And then we ask them, what do they want? And they tell us what they want. And then I say, what are you willing to do to get that? Well, I'm willing to double my sales. Perfect. We're willing to pay for that. Let's do it. And we start, I'm like a mediator that goes and agrees, where instead of putting more money at them where they're not going to see value in it, we give them the things they want. One of my favorite stories, we have a company that we're working with. Well, there's a couple of these stories, but this is a simpler one where an individual was into marathons and they just wanted to run. So we tied their goals to a new pair of shoes every quarter. Nice pair of shoes, right? Nicer than they've ever had. Every quarter, the company would pay for his shoes. Almost every time he'd go running, he'd take a picture and send it to the manager and say, thank you. Now, what do you think that individual is doing while he's running? He's thinking about work, right? It took his productivity and his results through the roof because it was a positive experience. And every time he made a call, it would get closer to the new pair of shoes. We have administrators. Every time based on organization, based on, we call it a perfection bonus. So how well are you doing your job? Every time they do their job well, efficiently, effectively, this one individual wanted to go sailing, would go towards a sailing lesson. Now it's less expensive for the company, more effective for the person.
Now, do you have to dig sometimes? Because, like, I'm thinking of obviously, I own a preschool, so I network with tons and tons of other preschool owners, people that
Yeah.
own dozens of them, and so just by nature, that industry is there's very high turnover, right? It's just like retail or anything
Yeah.
else. It's just you can't pay $20 an hour. Just the market, it's not there for that, and so as the owner that there's just a limit. And that that's the first thing if you ask an employee, like, oh, what do you want? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, more money, more money. So, like, how do you guide that conversation to
Yeah.
find out what they want, except for that? Or maybe it is money. Like,
No, it's a great question. And what it is, there's two ways, right? So for your specific example, and the cool thing is you were offering a commodity.
right.
Anything that's a low dollar earning potential without necessary training or certifications, it's a commodity. And what I mean by that is the next person that offers that person $1 more
That's
most likely could pull that person from you, right? Which is why the turnover is so high. Everyone experienced that with COVID recently.
True.
That other competitor was the federal government spending an extra $600 a week for unemployment. So how do you get people to come back when they're making just as much money on unemployment? So what happens is we don't compete dollar to dollar. We compete with value. We are going to give them more value. All right, so I'm talking to individual number one. What is it you want? I want more money. Cool. If you had more money, what would you do more of? Oh, man, I'd be able to pay for diapers. Cool. How about we cover all of your baby needs? Would that be interesting? Literally, just send us the receipt. We'll reimburse you right away. It's the same dollar amount that they're spending. There is no difference in this, except for the value is now John is the one who's covering my baby's needs. John's covering my cell phone. John's paying for my gas. John's covering my car loan, my insurance. John's covering my school bills. All these things that you would normally pay cash.
Yep.
Right. You would normally put cash towards the business. You're just changing it to what is it that I can remove from you? Because guess what? When they go to get another job and it's $1 more, yeah, but they're not paying for my school bill. Yeah, but you know what I mean? That's the beautiful thing about this is we compete on value. And it's not a trick. We're not like tricking people. We're very clear on what we're doing. But because of that, they're tied to the company more. And now they have ownership because there's personal value tied to the task they're doing, no matter what it is. Now, the higher level companies, when we're working with the managers in Google or Twitter or something like that, different story, right? We have individuals that we're working with right now that are doing an extra $1 million a quarter just because of what we're doing, right? It's all based on what they're responsible for and how they're doing it. We've changed their mind. And then what we do is we create, and this is for more of the higher end individuals. And I just mean more, not higher end in ability, but higher end and they bring in more money for the company.
Right.
Is we do the 90-day goal rush, which you see in this picture here under the U. And this is how, John, if you were to say, hey, I want to work with you for my sake, how can I get what I want? We literally help people get whatever they want in the next 90 days. And all we do is we take it, we break it down, and we break it into different chunks. They have result-based goals, and we break it into action and time-based goals. We walk them through, suggested with them, and then we coach them through the 90 days to ensure they get exactly what they want. We have companies pulling an extra $1 million in AR, individual jumping up in sales, literally doubling his sales just because now he has a plan and step to go. And this is in an electric company down in Florida. I mean, this is not like some big, organization that, has all the sexiest things in the world to sell. It's consistency. And that's what we teach.
Man, this is really good stuff. I can't imagine any employer or anyone that has a team that isn't just drooling right now and
I hope so.
Doesn't want to read your book.
That's how it started.
I just love your take because before the podcast I really was wondering. I mean, I read quite a bit of your book, so I knew the answer. But even before I opened it, I was just thinking to myself, like, man, this is a tough sell, right? Like, how do you really achieve that? So, and I want everybody to get your book. And I know we're running a little short on time, and I want to kind of finish the podcast, man, because I really want people to get your book, and we're going to talk about where people can connect with you and follow your work.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you this because, and I'm just going to be completely real with you personally, to me, the most inspiring thing about you, your story, your work and the reason that I just have so much respect for you is just I've been following your daughter Nat's journey since
Yeah.
you started posting about it. And to me, it blows me away, right? Like I cannot tell you how many times I've put myself in your shoes. I have 3 daughters, and I'm just like, man, how does Matt crush it at this level when he has this going on? How did he turn that into a mission? And I'm blown away. And I had to ask you, I would have asked you on the phone if it wasn't the podcast,
No,
but
I appreciate it.
can you share a little bit about that journey with Nat, what the situation is, and just how that changed you as a person and as an entrepreneur?
Man, well, you mean how it's changing me, right? It's
Yes.
not done. So Nat G is my daughter. She's 3 years old. She's got a very rare genetic disorder, 1 in 600 billionth of a chance of getting. She's the 19th person ever to report this, and the youngest by maybe 15 years. So we have an interesting uphill battle to fight with this. So basically, she's got just a muscular disorder. We don't know what it is. Some type of muscular dystrophy is the closest thing they can compare it to. So she can't use her muscles, right? She can't walk, she can't crawl, any of that stuff. And the scariest part is when she gets sick, she can't clear mucus. So because of that, the common cold puts her in the hospital, right? Like this whole COVID thing, yes, scares us, but we've been through like we know why people are scared of this thing because we've done it with our daughter. I think it's close to like a total of 4 months out of the last 12 months have been in the hospital if you add up all the days. So how did that help us, right? How did we get this? In our book, the second chapter, I talk about the hardest person to ever motivate. And I wrote that before we realized what was going on with Natalie. And I say it was me. It was when I was going through what I call the heartbeat. Now, the hardest person to motivate is Natalie. And here's the interesting thing. She's incredibly motivated. Now, here's what I learned. I almost made the biggest mistake of my life when I found out what was going on with Nat physically, right? She's having physical issues. So me, I'm a fixer. I'm an entrepreneur. I solve problems. That's all I do for a living. We need to get her in physical therapy. I don't know. Let's do 8 days a week. I don't care. I don't care what the cost is. I don't care what it is. We're going to fix this 8 days a week. So eventually, after a couple months goes by and I'm pushing physical, the state comes in and says, look, we might be able to give you some assistance. And at this point, we're getting $500,000 medical bills sent our way. I mean, we're like just getting punched in the face every which way. And I said, look, let's have a conversation. We came in, we talked to them. They say we have to do a physical evaluation and a cognitive evaluation. And I said, okay. So there's no reason to do a cognitive. She's totally fine mentally. In fact, she's a little smarter, I think, than the average. I think she was 2.5 at the time.
Right.
But like whatever you got to do, go for it. Well, they do it. She was about half her age physically, twice her age mentally. And I went, wait a minute, wait. She's that much smarter than the average 2.5-year-old and now 3, so going on 6. And my wife, fortunately, is a much smarter person than I am. And she said, well, why don't we work on that? And I said, holy smokes, I almost made the biggest mistake of Natalie and my life. And I realized I did it all the time when I would manage other people. And here's what it was. I wanted to fix the problem. That day, it flipped my entire script that the new way to do it is to manage weaknesses and leverage strengths. It's a big difference. So that is the philosophy I live by with her. That's the philosophy I challenge everyone listening to live by with every person they come in. I don't care if the frog can't fly, let it jump. I don't care if the fish can't fly, let it swim. You find a bird, get it to fly and work on flying. So what happens now is Natalie at 3 is coding, is playing the piano, is doing math problems at a 6 and 7-year-old level, right? She does everything she can to mentally be ahead because physically, as of right now, with what research we have and outside of a miracle happening, she will always be behind physically. So there's no need to compete on that. We need to manage it. We need to be careful with it, but we need to leverage her strengths because that's all she's going to have to compete with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, man, I was not ready for all this wisdom on this episode.
So, well, here's what happens, right? When you run into this situation, Maria and I get that question all the time. How do you guys handle this? Like, look, the first time was a lot harder than the fourth time.
Sure.
That makes sense. Like you start to get used to it. And if you talk to anyone and we're in the ICU talking with people, talking to families there, and we're like, oh, what day are you on? We're like, oh, 15. They're like, oh, we're 275. And you sit there and go, all right, my situation's shitty. It's not that bad.
That's right.
And there's always someone who has something worse than you, someone who has something better. And we tend to obsess over that, but we're never grateful that we don't have it worse. And that's something else that's come through. And then the final thing that I think is the biggest deal is the reason Maria and I can work through this stuff the way we do is because what I said in the beginning is we have systems in place before chaos shows up. And it's always going to show up. Welcome to 2020, right? 2020 did not derail us the way it derailed a lot of people because we have systems in place, and part of that system deals with dealing with chaos when it comes. So we know what to do when it's time to act. We have a system and a plan in place. That's what the LP is. So you want to buy the book, buy the book. It's great. You want to change your life, buy the LP. You go right on our website to get that. That is a simple solution to bring intentionality back to your life in a way that you've probably never experienced it before. So that's how we do it. And then finally, the other thing is Maria and I, we have a therapy. It's called Relationship. It's our podcast that we do together. And the whole purpose of the podcast is Maria and I bring whatever issue we're dealing with that week live to a recorder without editing it. So we have to work through it and show people, look, we all have stuff going on that looks a lot worse than our social media. Let us air out some of our stuff so you and your significant other can talk about it and go, oh, look, we're not the only crazy one. We all go through stuff. And that's how we make it through this. And fortunately, Natalie is just a blessing. I would not change a thing if I had to change who she is. I mean, she's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever heard of Le Vagabond? Have you ever seen them on YouTube?
No.
They're awesome. They're a sailing couple. They have a couple million subscribers.
Oh,
but they do the same. Yeah, they sail around the world, but they do the same thing, right? That your podcast is. They, instead of only showing the good, they actually like record the bad, and it's like
that's awesome.
It's such a great video. So finally, man, I just want to ask. You mentioned your website, and I'll put all of it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But I just want to see if you could share really quick the best place to get your book, the LP, what's your website, the best place to follow you. And then if somebody is with a company or they have employees and they're really interested in working with you one-on-one or in like, how can they go about doing that? What's the best place for all that?
Yes. So the best way to get a hold of me is email me directly. It's matt@lifepulseinc.com. If you want to go through kind of some other channels, you can do info@lifepulseinc.com. Some other people will handle that first. You might get a faster response. I'm kind of tied up doing a lot of coaching right now, but that would be how you get a hold of me. To follow us, social media @LifePulseInc on all the platforms. It's the same one. Purchase the book, go to our website, or obviously this little thing called Amazon. It's this new website where they have a lot of books that you can purchase and basically anything else you need. And then as far as what would be the next step, and I always, whenever I have like a podcast that I really engage with, I did one this morning in another part of the world that wasn't necessarily as engaging. But when I was doing it, so I didn't put this out there for that one, but for this one is, I like to put together a package based on what we talk about. I'll go back and listen to what we talked about and everything. I put together a special package for all your listeners. If they just go to, we'll put it at lifepulseinc.com/podgift, PODGIFT. There'll be some free stuff where they can get samples of the book, samples of the systems that we use, all that stuff. And then I'll basically put an entire bundle together that will be way lower than you'll find on our website that individuals could look at, see if it's something they want. All I ask that they do is please put this podcast title in so I can see who it is, whose listeners actually take action and report back to them and let them know that you got some action-oriented people. And again, feel free to let us know any way we can help. Man, we're so blessed to be able to go around and do this for a living and to be able to share this message with as many people as possible. We would love to. Absolutely.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for being on. Hopefully, maybe in the near future, we can have you on again just to when you write your next book. So
coming out soon.
I love it, man. Well, thank you again. You really, man, you knocked everybody's socks off. You over-delivered today. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.